Good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. On the program this morning, as I put up my contact information, if you have any questions, we'll be talking with candidate for the Town of Corning Supervisor, Jennifer Mullen, and Town of Corning Council member running for re-election, Stu Sammis. So that's coming up in just a little bit. We do have a lot to cover this morning, obviously. Tonight is the big GOP debate. We'll talk about that. Quite a few things here about President Biden, former President Trump, a couple local issues, state issues, regional issues. First, after the program, we received received some emails to that contact information. How's that? So let's go through a few of those before we take our first break. All right. Frank, just a thought. I share your curiosity about Nikki Haley. My red flags go up whenever they push someone or suggest that a supposed Republican candidate is superior. It tells me it's someone to steer clear of. I will say, I've been saying that to echo that point. I agree. I do like Nikki Haley, though. It's not as if there's a problem necessarily with Nikki Haley. It's just that raises the red flag because, and I've said this before, I think it's one of the reasons that led to a President Trump is that the Republican kingmakers, the supposedly the smartest people in the room, kept telling us the only way we can win is with, for instance, John McCain. And that was a pretty dismal campaign. And then a few years later, the only way we could win is with Mitt Romney. And Mitt Romney later and has since attacked Trump way more than he ever attacked Obama during that campaign. And then we were told the only person that could beat Hillary Clinton would be Jeb Bush. And I think that's when that was the straw that broke the camel's back, where people finally said, you know what? Maybe these consultants that run failed campaigns but somehow get hired for other campaigns that fail, maybe they're not the smartest people in the room. Maybe the smartest people in the room are the voters and the primary voters. Now, we know the Democrat Party does not feel that way about their primary voters. Just ask any Bernie Sanders supporter what the Democrat Party thinks of their primary voters. But I think it was proven in that campaign that it is really about the voters. That's why we always tell people to get out there and vote, because you are the smartest person in the room. The next one, and I thought this was kind of interesting. Let's go to it. A little bit smaller font, sorry. I heard that the new free test kits for COVID cover all new variants, but could be expired, although the date has been extended. And I've heard that about COVID tests in the past. And never mind what the expiration date is on the box, still use it, right? Tell me how it covers the new strains if they are already expired. Good point. Unless perhaps a leftover supply of free taxpayer-funded tests have been resurrected. That's a fair point. I do not have the answer for that. But again, I do believe it is a fair point. I wonder, listen, I take tests if I don't feel well, so I'm not putting down the test. I'm just suggesting that is a little suspicious about the new strains. Okay. Hey, I know we've had numerous guests on this program that have talked about gun rights, scope organizations and the like. There's a piece that I think would interest you before we go to break, and I want to talk a little bit more about it when we come back. But more women are turning to firearms for self-defense to even the scales, even the playing field, protecting, quote, the lives we love, end quote. What I think is really interesting about this speaks about a bunch of different issues. Of course, the Second Amendment, but also the real concern about public safety. And this is not just in New York, but that's really across the country. When various towns, cities enact these, bail reform laws, these kind of coddling the criminal laws. And so women across America are saying enough is enough. Jessica Milhans, a firearms instructor in Washington State, said women are the fastest growing group of gun owners in America. The claim is backed by data from Gallup showing the percentage of women who reported owning a gun rising from 15% in 2016 to 22% in 22. That's the highest percentage since the organization began gathering data 15 years ago. So I guess I don't have to talk more about that. You can find it for yourself at Fox News. But it also ties in with, obviously, New York State going after more of the law-abiding citizens. Well, on a good note, before we get away from this topic, Justice Clarence Thomas, wants a conference on the New York ammunition law, something we've talked a lot about here on the program. I can put that up on your screen. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has moved to consider a challenge to New York's provision of the Concealed Carry Improvement Act on background checks for ammunition purchases that went into effect a few weeks ago, according to Supreme Court records. Thomas agreed to bring the case to the full court for a conference day on October the 6th. So that's something to keep a close eye on. I know many of you had the problem, especially as hunting season nears, a problem with the background check on ammunition, where you may even come back through no fault of your own as being denied. The system was not set up, was not properly set up, I should put, before it went into effect. Typical New York. We talked about it with Sheriff Allard just the other day. Very much like the cannabis rollout, doomed from the beginning, because New York, well, I was almost going to say shoot first, ask questions later. Maybe not the right term to use, but they do a knee jerk in Albany to almost virtue signal, and then the unintended consequences or the implementation, that's an afterthought. But we have to take our short break, and then we'll be back with Frankly Speaking here. Man, we are going fast already, isn't it? All right, I love it. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We have to take another short break because I went on a tangent in our first section. But before I do, I want to remind you, coming up this weekend, if you were thinking about running in the Wineglass Marathon, or maybe you're just a resident and not sure exactly how that works, or you're just a fan, we have a very special broadcast coming up, the Guthrie Wineglass Marathon Preview Special, brought to you by our friends at Hector Hideaway. It'll be this Saturday from 9:30 a.m., or at 9:30 a.m., and then at 10 p.m., and then on Sunday at 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. So that is to prepare you, especially if you're a runner. We'll be talking with two special guests, Race Director Sheila Sutton, as well as Sheriff Jim Allard. So do not miss it. I'll be your host. I'm really proud of it, so I hope that you'll catch it. Now we've got to take a short break, and our guests are here, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. My headphones are falling off. Our guests are in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Of course. Now we're talking about the town of Corning this morning. You're running for town supervisor, right?
That is correct,
And
yes.
then, of course, Stu, you're running for re-election as council member. So let's talk a little bit for those in the town of Corning that aren't aware, because it is hard to get this information now. What is the race shaping up to look like?
Right now the race is shaping up with several open positions. You have myself running for town supervisor.
Right.
We have two open council positions. So Stuart here is running for town council, as well as Mike Brenning, which will show up as Michael Brenning on the ballot. You have town highway. You have
Court.
And the court judges.
And one court judge and the town clerk.
The town clerk, yes.
Right. So there's six of the 9 positions are open.
And this is what's important to discuss, because as a side note, we always talk about next year, right? Mm-hmm. You got Congress, you got the presidential, everybody's talking about it already. But there are some really big elections locally, not just in the town of Corning, that will affect people's day-to-day lives. And I don't think they realize necessarily, a lot of people do, but the importance of the local elections.
It is essential.
Mm-hmm.
What we do here affects everybody here.
Yeah, right.
So the reason I ran even for council was, how can we make a difference?
Mm-hmm.
What can we do better? And moving up to try and step in as supervisor, that hasn't changed.
Right.
It's what can we do to make life better for our neighbors?
When you first ran, I remember when you first ran for council, I guess maybe what shocked you, or what did you learn? You fast forward today, it's a lot different than probably the first day that you showed up.
Much different,
Yeah.
much different. I've learned so much.
Mm-hmm.
Every day is learning. The biggest thing I've learned is we all may have different ideas. We're all able to work together.
Right.
So I can come into a meeting, and if I bandstand, I'm waving my I can do whatever I want flag. It doesn't work.
That never
It
works.
doesn't work. We literally sit together, have conversations, truly care about each other,
Right.
the outcome. And Stuart will question me every time, how are you going to pay for this idea?
Sure.
And that's fair. That is
That's a question
essentially
that should be
fair.
asked more, not in the town of Corning in general, right?
Absolutely.
I would say that our standard is Jen is an idea generator, an unbelievable idea generator. She generates too many ideas. I worked at Sullivan Park for a long time.
Sure.
And very little of the great ideas that those geniuses up there have,
Yeah.
come to fruition.
Sure.
But you have to have a process for picking things out. We have our process. Jen comes up with the ideas. She bounces them off of Mike Brenning. Then she comes to me, and I'm saying, "Oh, that's because she's got it narrowed down."
Right.
And I said, "That's great.
Yeah.
How are we going to pay for it?"
Sure.
Yep.
And
then I call Lon on the way home in the car, and I have an hour of questions that
Yep.
should be asked.
Sure.
Right.
He asked me all the questions that any constituent should ask.
Right.
And he will give me the forewarning of if you can't answer these now, you will answer them in a meeting, and that's fair.
Oh, yeah.
That is 100% fair, and it's a gift because we all care and we're trying to do the best we can.
Well, in a moment, I want to talk about the town of Corning in general and some of the things that you guys are working on, all these ideas.
Sure.
But before that, why did you decide to run for supervisor? I'll start with you.
For me, it's not just a step up, but it's opening doors.
Yeah.
Right now, things are kind of closed off in the nicest of ways.
Sure.
And I have had such a kindness from the town of Big Flats of how can we work together? City of Corning, how can we work together? Trying to find ways we can, reduce the costs that are going on
Sure.
the town residents by having some shared services. Those doors need to get opened by a supervisor, by someone in that position, and I want to do that.
Sure.
We want to communicate better. I want to have office hours where people can come in and see me, tell me what's going on, call me.
Have the conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
That is so important. And as a council member, I'm able to contribute a lot.
Right.
But as a supervisor, I'm able to contribute more, which is really what I want to do.
Sure. And why did you decide to run for re-election?
Jen.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah. I was, both Mike and I were sitting on the fence as to whether we were going to run again.
Sure.
And we basically said, Jen, if you run for supervisor, we'll run again.
Wow.
And Jen said, well, if I'll run for supervisor if you guys run again.
Yeah.
Not that it's a mutual admiration society.
Sure.
It's that we work so well together, and we couldn't imagine moving what we're seeing as a vision for the town forward without the cooperation. And we're not leaving Lon Fiskus, the other council member, out of this
Sure.
conversation, but Lon's not up for
Sure. Right.
re-election.
Of course.
Yeah.
And he has been extremely supportive as
Yeah.
well. We've just had a really cohesive board where everyone has really shown we want to do good things and trying to move that forward.
We're talking about the town of Corning this morning. So let's talk about some of the things that when you look back at your career so far, that you've accomplished, and obviously there's always more that can be done. So let's start with the accomplishments.
Sure. First thing would be the parks. So Oakfield, we have put up a new park, and the kids are loving it.
Oh, good.
And what's amazing is I couldn't do that alone, right? I can come up with these grandiose ideas, but you have our crew in building and grounds. Ken Fields literally busted his backside to get that up and never complained.
Yeah.
He was always sending me pictures and look what we've done, and to see the pride,
Yeah.
right? To see these kids out there, to see how happy it's just made everybody. It's like, this is amazing. And we want to grow that. So we started small because we should.
Yeah,
We
right.
should. We used ARPA funds instead of let's raise taxes. No, let's use the funds for a good project. So we are moving over to the Manor off Fairway, and we're looking at how do we update that park. When I was knocking on doors and talking to people, really the push was, can we have a gazebo?
Right.
Absolutely. Why can't we do this? And Kenny again is, if you want to do this, we can do this. And they're so excited.
Oh, yeah.
Which is amazing to see everybody engaged. Another project, actually,
Well, I just want to add
Stuart
one
came
thing,
up with.
thing about It has to be called a playground, by
Playground.
the way.
Oh, playground.
I'm so sorry. I'm
It has
so
to be
sorry.
called a playground.
I need to be diligent of New
Yes.
York State's terminology.
Yes.
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 Isn't that
If
funny? I was going to say, new as someone new to our council, not the town of Corning Council, of course. You had mentioned ARPA funds. When do you get your decoder ring when you become a council to know what these words mean? You ever notice that? It's
so
overwhelming
much
at first.
Searching
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
finding
Yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah, but that's a side note. So you were going to say more, but I know one thing that I believe we both talked about back in the radio days was the town hall.
Yes. So the town hall definitely needs to be updated.
Yeah.
That's not a question. It's how. So Stu and I, before COVID, we just asked how much will this cost, and we were floored.
Yeah.
This is like the $2-3 million range on our own.
Right.
So we decided, well, how can we work together with the Joint Fire District? We had looked at how can we possibly build a new building. Well, now we're up to the 8-9 millions, and it was, I'm like, this is crazy. So Mike, sitting as supervisor right now, has just brought people through just to look at how can we update and keep things fiscally responsible while using ARPA funds for that. Because these these price tags floored me. You want
Right.
to talk about learning? And some of the misconceptions were, well, she wants to raise taxes to cover that. No, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm a single mom still. I have to pay for this.
Sure.
So turning around, it was, how can we do this and be fiscally responsible? And right now we're just putting out bids to see how much will this really cost.
Sure.
So we are slowly moving forward on that.
Oh, that's great. And I know, again, I feel like I'm saying, hey, we talked about this years ago.
Sure.
But I know that this has been a goal of both of yours, and you mentioned it a little bit when you said that you wanted to have office hours, improve communications with the residents. And I will say that no matter what town you go to, that's very difficult because people aren't engaged. I don't know how many people come to your board meetings.
About 7 on average.
So that's not even that
6 to 7.
bad, really. I mean, and which you know what I mean. It's
Absolutely.
comparable to other places. So how do you hope to improve that line of communication?
Well, the one thing when I started is, with the board's permission, we built the website. I was
Okay.
able to actually put up the website, which needs tweaking, and I hear
They
everyone.
always do. Yeah.
How do you find the documents? So making it easier.
Mm-hmm.
And Lon has agreed, step on board and I'll help you with this. Another great shared project.
Right.
My cell phone. I want my phone number out there. Call me. I don't know. We are putting up Zoom videos so people can go on and watch this.
See, that's
See what
important.
happens. We already have Zoom, and why not use it for that? So sharing these videos. What did we cover? What did we do? I try and put the agenda up as soon as possible so people can go on and see, is this a topic I really want to show up
Right.
for? Now, should they show up? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I know sometimes they're like, oh, they're just going to vote. But come for the conversation. Talk to us. And then office hours.
Yeah.
I promised to have a Keurig come in, so have a cup of coffee, and just tell me what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah. So if nothing else, you get a free cup of coffee.
Absolutely.
And also on the communication side is we have to take advantage of the technology more and more.
Mm-hmm.
And we have some people who, they literally want people to, us to mail notices
Sure.
to them and everything.
And
It
that's
would-
costly. People
it
don't
would
realize how
bust
costly
It is
that
the
very-
budget.
It really
it
would.
would bust the budget.
Now, on the really important issues, should
Yes.
we
Oh,
absolutely?
of course, yeah,
But
yeah,
there's
yeah.
got to be a term of judgment.
Yeah.
And we're almost out of time already. This goes very fast. I should have warned you. TV goes
Sure.
very fast. But let's skip ahead. I want to talk about the 2024 budget. Are you guys, I would assume, already in the process, or the beginning process?
Mike just posted that yesterday
Oh.
to the town clerk to come out to us. Now, it came out late yesterday afternoon. I have not looked at it.
Nor
Sure.
have I.
But when I spoke with him yesterday, he said, we're doing well.
Good.
We're not in the deficit. We're not pulling from reserves, which we shouldn't be.
Right.
You can only pull from reserves for so long. But from what I understand, we're under the tax cap. Now, to get in, to see if we're under the tax cap, he hasn't been able to do that yet.
Sure.
So it's just not open.
Well, it sounds like it's a good start, though.
It is.
It is. And I mean, preliminarily, we were looking at what, 1-2%
Possibly. Yeah.
increase.
Okay.
I mean, it could be more, but it depends.
Right now,
I-
we've got to get our eyes on it.
Right.
Yeah.
And as you know, we really have about control of 15%
I
of the budget.
I know.
Everything else is dictated by the county,
Yeah.
the state, and the feds.
Mhm.
So it's hard.
It's very difficult. People don't realize how, because you're still very important, obviously, in the scheme of things, but they've tied our hands so much in general at the town and village levels.
Absolutely.
So before we go, what would you say to voters?
I would say please come out and vote. Whether it is for me, whether it is for any person, come out and vote. Your vote counts. We've seen that in election after election, and what you have to say matters. So I really do hope you vote for me, but please come out and vote.
Yeah.
And I would say the same thing. And as I often say, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
Of course.
And if you go out and vote, then you have exercised your rights under the Constitution,
Right.
obviously, but you're making your voice heard, and we do listen.
And again, like I said, I know next year is what everybody talks about, but there's still something very gratifying about voting in the off-year elections, because especially if you do your homework. And I think that's what's neat about this program, because people do their homework, and that's why we asked you to come on, so people can be more informed, because there's not a lot of avenues, going back to your point about communications, where people can find out about who's running.
Absolutely.
It becomes very difficult. So go out. You still get the I vote sticker, so you can still take the picture and put it on your Facebook, and you'll be the outlier, because hopefully we can get people out to vote. But so how should people help your campaign?
Word of mouth is essential. I'm knocking on every door that I can. If you can, spread my name, have people come out and vote, bring your friends, and any word of mouth. I'm on Facebook.
Okay.
My cell number is up. Anything you can do to help would be
So they can contact you if they want to find out more and maybe help your campaign.
We have signs, we have flyers. I would love to put signs in your yard.
Sure.
But whatever you're comfortable with.
Well, thank you so much for being on the program this morning.
Thank
Best
you
of
so
luck.
much for having me.
All right, let's do it again before Election Day. How's that?
That sounds great.
That's a deal.
All right, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, this was the M.A. Neal Financial Services section of our program. Stay with us. Thank you again to our guests for the M.A. Neal Financial Services section of our program. I'm tongue-tied this morning. I want to thank Jennifer Mullen, who's running for Town of Corning Supervisor, and I want to thank Town of Corning Council Member running for re-election, Stuart Samus. You may know we call him Stu, but on the official ballot, it's Stuart. So that's why I had that up on the screen. As always, I'm going to put my contact information up. If you have any candidates that you would like to see on the program, now you can say you want, I don't know, RFK Jr., or you want Trump, or you want Biden. I don't know. I'll try. How's that? But I'm saying at the local level, because this year, as we were mentioning during that interview, is an off year, and people are relatively quiet on the topic. And unfortunately, the nature of our area, I suppose you could say, there's not a lot of coverage. So sometimes there's confusion on who's running, who's not. That's why I love having interviews with local guests like that, because you get to find out about who they are, what they believe in, and maybe not get that information elsewhere. So you can essentially sit here, well, sit in your living room, not here, sit in your living room in your pajamas and have a town hall of the airwaves, have a public forum of the airwaves. And that's what we try to provide to you here on the program. So now let's get back into the news of the day. We've got a little time. I know I got to take a break here in just a little bit. I wanted to mention this quickly, just quickly. Wealthy millennials. Now, millennials are defined as 27 to 42 years old. Wealthy millennials are leaving New York State at the highest rate. This is an email I received directly from a group called Upgraded Points. They looked at the U.S. states attracting the most wealthy millennials. We're not attracting them, we're losing them. Between COVID-related changes in the labor market, including higher wages and more flexible working arrangements, and the pre-existing tendency of younger and higher-earning workers to be mobile, millennials in the top income bracket have frequently been on the move. Researchers rank states according to the net inbound migration of wealthy millennials, looking only at people who moved into or out of the state. New York State reported a 4.6% net decrease in wealthy millennials. This isn't specifically millennials, but wealthy millennials. Defined here as 26 to 45, earning over $200,000 annually. Overall, wealthy millennials are leaving New York State at the highest rate in the nation. And this is just millennials. We talked about it in the past with businesses. We've talked about it with retirees, with the wealthy in general, because you can't continue to push the line that we're going to get the wealthy. We're going to continue to tax the wealthy and then not expect them to leave. And let's forget the wealthy. Let's talk about all citizens. When you have public safety on people's minds, you have high taxes. These things lead to this mass migration. And the reason, not the reason I bring it up, but I think a point to make in this before I move on, the tax-based change, the change from wealthy millennials moving is $8 billion. $8,319,459,000 in the tax-based change. Why do I mention that? Well, obviously, it's concerning, but also that has to be made up somewhere. Now you're going to say, well, why don't they rein in the spending in Albany? Well, let's be realistic. Do you see Albany doing that anytime soon? They won't even take on public safety as a serious matter. So think about that. That tax-based changes and who makes up for it. It's you and me and the people that stay here. And this isn't to always criticize New York. It's just the fact of the matter, and it's something that has to be addressed. Changes need to be made. And overall, not just with wealthy, on a completely different ranking, and I don't know why these all came out in my email, but millennials have ranked New York as a 29th best state for millennials. That's not good, because I may have worded that wrong. But as a result, New York has emerged as the 29th best state for millennials compared to its ranking. I guess last year we were 41%, so making moves. But the wealthy are leaving, and there's a quick update on New York. All right, so we've had a couple New York issues this morning. Tonight is the presidential debate. The GOP presidential primary debate, excuse me. I don't want you to forget that. Make sure you watch it, and we'll be talking about it tomorrow on the program as well. We've got a few things here about Biden. We've got a few things here about the GOP and Trump when we come back. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We are back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. I'm your host, Frank Acom. So the big scoop yesterday by Axios, at least according to some news outlets, and Axios, left-leaning outlet, just so you know, but it is interesting that they brought this up, that Biden's team is on a don't let him trip mission. Biden's team is taking extra steps to prevent him from stumbling in public, as he did in June, over that sandbag. But he's had numerous examples of this, even a little bit of a flub yesterday. But the reason is obviously the optics, the PR. There's not really a surprise here. And obviously it's a concern. If you recall, the media's laser-like focus on then President Trump walking across that platform at West Point, and he was just walking slowly. So when you've had numerous instances of this with the president, it is going to be a story. Do I believe it's been covered to the extent of if it were a President Trump? No, of course not. I think they've tried to do the best to cover it up, but at some point, I think it was James Carville, who we'll get to in a second, said something where, pretty soon this just becomes, the optics become fact, essentially. That people just say, okay, we've seen this enough, even if they're only getting it on outlier areas or if they're just getting small doses of it. So he's been going to a physical therapist to improve his balance. Also, he's been wearing tennis shoes more often to avoid slipping and using the short stairs on Air Force One, entering the plane at a lower deck. Now, Democrats, according to Axios, including some in the administration themselves, are terrified that Biden would fall at the most inopportune time, like let's say November or late October of 2024. That's a nightmare scenario to them. So they asked spokespeople for Biden, again, Axios did, giving recognition to where we got this from. White House spokesperson Andrew Bates told Axios, quote, "This isn't new. It was proactively and transparently disclosed in a 2021 report from the president's doctor and again this year." And now, in typical Biden administration fashion, when they get what I believe is a fair question, they, for some reason, and talk about biting the hand that's feeding you. They did this recently when we talked about what was it that the White House kept complaining about the media coverage. Oh, it was about Hunter. and saying, or the impeachment, not Hunter, excuse me, but the impeachment inquiry, where they said stop attacking Biden and go after the Republicans, actually telling the media that. But this is why I bring it up. Quote, again, this is Bates from the White House. Quote, this article fits an unfortunate pattern of media attempting to sensationalize something that's long been public, rather than covering the president's very real achievements for hardworking Americans. We talked about this at the time. People in the media are very full of themselves. They don't like to be told what to do. Yet this White House continues to do that on a regular basis. Focus on Republicans, not us. In this case, focus on his achievements. Well, it's going to make for a slow news day. So they have the audacity to complain about the media coverage for this White House. Biden has been handled with kid gloves from the beginning. Even if you think about the articles that have made ripples, like, oh, I can't believe they said that. It is still very weak compared to other presidents, specifically presidents with an R next to their name. I mean, look at the Hunter Biden story. Many people not knowing about anything about that, if they watch certain media outlets, until the sweetheart plea deal. Okay, so that ties into a break. And then when we come back from the break, a little bit more about Biden, some things here about, hopefully, man, a lot more about Biden, a few things here about the debate tonight. So stay with us. We are moving fast here on Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. So James Carville, the Raging Cajun, you remember James Carville, longtime Democrat strategist, maybe you'd call him. He was on Bill Maher's show, and they talked about not just Biden, but the Democrat Party. This ties into what we were just mentioning. I'll start first with what he had to say about Biden, essentially saying that he's going to lose because at some point perception becomes reality. So the fumbles, the gaffes, you see enough of those and they become reality. Now they're trying to suggest that's not reality, but again, perception becomes reality. Bill Maher saying he cannot run for president. He'll look bad in the debates. He will be Ruth Bader Biden. It's not a good look. So going back, and again, I think admitting that it's if you just look at the polls, I mean, and he doesn't say the exact quote here. I got cut off. But what Carville's saying, if you just look at the polls, what is this, like 75% don't want Biden to run? That's not good, no matter what poll you look at. But I mention it too because he talked about the Democrat Party in general. And he said, I find the left to be just annoying. The Western far left is habitually the most stupid, naive people you can imagine. This is James Carville, longtime Democrat strategist. They come up with these really goofy constructs. And it's all about feeling good about yourself. Now, Bill Maher agreed, and they later mocked some of the far left. Carville said he found them annoying and silly. Most people don't even know, this is the far left, what they're talking about. The identity left are silly. They're not evil, they're just goofy. What happened is, I got to be careful because it was a podcast, so they cuss. So bear with me. What happened is, overeducated, coastal, white people got a hold of the word being woke. You hear that quite frequently. They got a hold of that word. And like they do with everything else, they completely, we'll say, messed it up and made everybody in the country mad. We'll put it that way. If we could just get the humanities faculty at Amherst College to shut up, we'd be a lot better off. So that's coming from James Carville. And really, that has become a part of the Democrat Party, right? Where people talk about this so frequently, the far left and the kind of the woke ideology. And just to prove his point, now granted, this is coming out of the United Kingdom, but just to prove his point, there's an actress, Kathy Tyson, who said that if you use the term woke in a way to maybe criticize someone or say, boy, these kids are all woke and they're crazy ideas, very much what James Carville just said and Bill Maher just said, using it in a negative connotation. This actress, Kathy Tyson, claims that being called woke is as bad, that's a quote, is as bad as a racial slur. I imagine some of the readership use the word woke. For me, it's as bad as a term as an offensive racial slur. Does that not just tie right into what Carville's saying? All right, anyway, back to Biden, because Carville was criticizing, suggesting, maybe not criticizing Biden the man, but saying that he's going to lose. Do we have time? Yeah, we do. Michael Goodwin has a really good piece that kind of not only reiterates what we've been saying on the program, but adds to it that Joe Biden's running out of time to prove he can still lead. And we've talked about the time frame that something would have to change. And I know we've been getting suggestions of what that ticket could look like if Biden steps aside. You know, Gavin Newsom, not that popular, but looks like he's running. You know, you've got the people who suggest, and I think rightfully so, that maybe Michelle Obama would step in. Something to that extent, right? Well, Michael Goodwin said that, you know, yeah, okay, Biden is doing so bad right now that he actually had to go to the picket line, the United Auto Workers picket line. And even there, he only spoke for about 12 minutes. But he got his photo op. And he needed that from what at one point was a Democrat stronghold, the union workers. He says more revealing is the panic that led the White House to arrange this event in the first place. And it all goes back to the polls. And they're already doing what should be a really simple, easy photo op that you do just kind of as a throwaway closer to the election. They're doing this 13 months away to try to maybe see an uptick in his polling. But the president's fight is here and now. And so late September of 2023 is starting to feel like the stretch run of a presidential campaign. That's a very good point. Now, he's running out of time, is Michael Goodwin's argument, because, and this is what I thought was very interesting and informative for all of us, there is an unofficial deadline of December, which would still give other candidates enough time to get on state ballots if he withdraws. So between now and then, Biden has to prove he deserves a second shot. So there's our answer, something we've been looking for. I did not know that, but the unofficial, just because of the time frame of getting on the state ballots, December is the unofficial deadline if something were to happen where Biden decides he's going to step aside and not run for re-election. Let's take another short break. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Here is something that I had not thought about, and it piqued my interest. So, you know, the Hollywood strike, and it's a story that's perfect for Hollywood because Hollywood loves talking about themselves. So that's why you see so much coverage of it. I don't know if your life has directly been affected by there being no late night shows or daytime talk shows, because you've got this show, so you're fine. But for some people, I guess it's just really destroying their days and nights. But the real consequence of this is the cash cow is running up. Little notice results of the Hollywood strikes, a blow to political campaigns. Now we can talk about that they're, that these Democrat politicians aren't going to get the money, and the coffers aren't quite as full as they once were because Hollywood is supposedly penny pinching as they're on strike. But I want you to just take a look at the media here for a moment, and specifically this is Politico. Think of that headline for a moment, marinate on it. Little notice result of the Hollywood strikes, a blow to political campaigns. Now, what political campaigns would that be? You think this is really hurting a lot of Republicans? You think a lot of Republicans are saying, boy, my coffers aren't quite as full as they once were? Come on. Why even word it like that? A blow to Democrats' campaigns would be more factually accurate and more to the point. But I just found that hilarious, because if the shoe was on the other foot, if it was whoever the big donor is with the Republican Party, I know for a while there was that one casino magnate magnate. So let's say Vegas wasn't doing, they were on strike. Well, do you think it would say a blow to political campaigns, or do you think it would say a blow to Republicans? Anyway, I know I don't want to go too far on that. All right, let's take our last break. When we come back, we're going to wrap up a couple updates on Hunter Biden and a few really quick things here about Trump. Maybe Bob Menendez. I doubt it. We're not going to have that much time. But stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio on Market Street. I'm your host, Frank Acom. So Hunter Biden received $260,000 from Beijing during his dad's campaign, and it was delivered, if you will, wired to Joe Biden's address. Very interesting there. The revelation is another blow to President Biden's insistence that he had no knowledge or discussion of his only surviving son's foreign business interests. So Hunter received 2 wire transfers from Chinese nationals worth a total of $260,000 months after Dad Joe began his 2020 presidential campaign. I wonder what the significance of that time frame is. Influence peddling? And with the elder Biden's Delaware home listed, meaning Joe Biden's Delaware home listed as the beneficiary address. Now, Hunter seems to be really digging a hole for himself. He falsely claimed, he's claiming, and it is falsely, that his laptop was hacked. So I think he's suing Giuliani, maybe others. So what he just did with that lawsuit is admit that the emails, the pictures, the documents on that laptop are his. He's always somewhat denied it, always kind of went around the edges on that. But what he did by making this decision to say that his laptop was hijacked, he just verified that all that's accurate. You know who it was Anthony Weiner. He made the mistake of saying, as a congressman at the time, saying that his phone was hacked. That really opens investigations and makes it anyway. We can't get into this whole piece by Andrew McCarthy. But he says at the end, in the interim, by suing, the president's son opens himself up to discovery and depositions that could be used against him in the criminal proceedings he now faces. Speaking of those, Hunter could have ended all that by accepting the sweetheart plea bargain his father's Justice Department offered. 2 tax misdemeanors, no prosecution on gun charges, and a DOJ recommendation of no jail time. Instead, Team Biden's approach of attacking when the situation cries out for retreat, the same mindless aggression that instigated the civil suits, led to the implosion of the plea deal. As a result, instead of being scot-free, Hunter's been indicted on 3 felony gun charges and faces the imminent likelihood of at least 2 felony tax evasion charges. The president's son is in a hole of his own making. Maybe he ought to, stop digging. That's Andrew McCarthy, a former federal prosecutor. Okay, everybody's on the left, CNN like that, of the world saying that Trump skips the debate tonight, is the debate, as 7 other Republicans compete for the role of understudy. So in this case, if Trump gets in some type of trouble or whatever, that they will be the next in line, or you'll see others, they're vying for Trump's VP. We're out of time. I had so much more to get to. Thank you to everybody who joined us. Thank you to our guest, candidate for Town of Corning Supervisor Jennifer Mullen and Town of Corning Council member running for re-election Stuart Sammis. Thank them for being on the program. Join us tomorrow morning, starting at 7 for Frankly Speaking, right here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow morning.